I spent 28 years inspecting bridges for the Ministry of Transportation, and there is one thing that job teaches you that nothing else does. The difference between a structure that is failing because of one bad moment and a structure that has been failing slowly for years and finally shows it. I did not expect to be running that same diagnosis on my own family at a Christmas dinner table. 3 weeks before Christmas, my daughter-in-law sent my wife a spreadsheet, a literal spreadsheet, color-coded, with 17 dishes, 28 guests, and a prep start time of 4 in the morning. I read it over Eleanor's shoulder at our kitchen table in Mississauga, and I have stood on scaffolding in February wind, being asked to do less with more notice than that. Before I get into it, if you're new here, the comment section is the best part of this channel, so tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. Let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand who Eleanor is before you understand what almost happened to her. We've been married 31 years. She taught piano out of our living room for most of that time. 3 generations of kids from our street, learning their scales on the same upright. She remembers every student's name, what piece they struggled with, who needed pushing and who needed patience. She is the most capable woman I've ever known, and she is also someone who has spent her whole life making things easy for other people. Sometimes at a cost to herself, she never lets anyone see. Our son Tyler is 33. Steady kid, civil engineer like his old man, just on the structural side instead of inspection. He measures everything twice. I'm proud of him the way a father is proud when his son turns out decent. Tyler met Brienne 4 years ago, married her 18 months after that. Small ceremony at a vineyard out near Niagara-on-the-Lake. Eleanor pressed the linens herself 2 nights running because Brienne wanted old money, not rental company. I liked Brienne fine at the start. Sharp, organized, had opinions about everything, and wasn't shy sharing them. None of that's a character flaw on its own. The problem, and it took me longer than it should have to name, was that Brienne's opinions about things tended to include opinions about what Eleanor should be doing about them, and the way she phrased it never left room for the answer to be anything but yes. I mentioned it to Eleanor once, early on. She told me I was being overprotective. She wasn't wrong about that, but I wasn't wrong either. It started small, the way these things do. Brienne's birthday, 14 months into the marriage. A Tuesday text to Eleanor. Hey mom, Tyler and I are thinking low-key dinner. Saturday, maybe 10 people. Your butter tarts would be perfect. No question mark anywhere that mattered. Already dressed and standing at the door, that kind of sentence. Eleanor made the butter tarts. She also made a roast, scalloped potatoes, and a trifle from scratch, because she'd once heard Brienne mention liking trifle, months earlier in passing. That's Eleanor. She listens, and she acts, and she doesn't make a production out of it. Nobody thanked her after. Brienne posted photos of the table. The roast didn't make a single frame. 5 months later, they went to Mexico for 10 days, all-inclusive, down in Puerto Vallarta. Tyler texted me the Thursday before they left. Hey dad, any chance Biscuit can stay with you and mom starting Sunday? I said of course we like the dog. But I noticed it was Thursday. They were leaving Sunday, and this was the first either of us had heard about the trip at all. I brought it up with Eleanor that night. She shrugged, said it was fine. I said it's not about whether it's fine, it's about how she asks. Eleanor gave me the look, patient, a little tired, the one that means I know, Walter, but let's not make it a thing. I let it go. I should not have let it go. 3 weeks before Christmas, on a Wednesday night, I was watching the Leafs lose in the Den, when Eleanor came in from the kitchen, holding her phone out, like it was something that might bite her. I read it. Turkey and a ham, mashed and scalloped potatoes both, 3 kinds of squash, Brussels sprouts with the bacon, fresh cranberry, not the jellied kind from a can, homemade rolls, 2 pies, a Yule log, a cheese board for arrivals, 17 items. Underneath, 28 guests confirmed. Prep starts 4 a.m. Kitchen's all yours, Mom. Kitchen's all yours. Not our kitchen. Not, would you be up for it? Like a purchase order. Like someone confirming a vendor, I looked at Eleanor. Arms crossed in the doorway, not angry yet. Just very still, the way she gets when she's deciding whether something is as bad as it looks. It was as bad as it looked. I'll call Tyler, I said. No. Quiet but clear. Let me handle it first. She texted back. That's an enormous amount for one person. Could we split a few of the dishes around? Brianne's reply came in under 3 minutes. Oh mom, you've done it before. You're so much better at this than any of us would be. We'll be slammed setting up the rest of the house. Eleanor read it, set the phone face down on the counter. and didn't say anything for a long time. 2 Sundays before Christmas, Tyler had us over for a casual supper, pizza, nothing Brienne had cooked, and I'll give the woman this, she never pretended otherwise in a kitchen. After dinner, while Brienne's sister Paige was telling some story about her condo renovation, Eleanor found a gap and turned to Brienne. I've been thinking about Christmas dinner. Maybe Paige could take on a couple of the sides? Or we order the pies from that bakery on Lakeshore. They do a wonderful tourtière. Brian laughed, warm on the surface, decided underneath, and patted Eleanor's hand. Mom, that's literally your thing though. Don't overthink it. It's always so beautiful when you do it. Paige nodded into her wine. Her husband Dean looked at his phone. Tyler looked at his pizza and said nothing. Not one word. I had spent 33 years teaching that boy that silence in the face of something unfair is its own kind of answer. Somewhere between his 20s and now, he'd misplaced the lesson. On the drive home, I said, "That's not happening." Eleanor looked out the window at the snow starting to come down over the Queensway. Walter, 28 people, alone, 4 in the morning. No. She went quiet for a second. I know, she said. Then I already have a plan. I looked at her. She was almost smiling. Tell me, I said. That night, Eleanor called Donna Pelletier. No, not Donna, that name's spoken for. She called her oldest friend, a woman named Suzanne Whitlock, who she'd taught alongside at the music conservatory for 19 years, before Suzanne retired down to Naples, Florida, the way half of English Canada eventually does. They talked every Sunday morning, an hour minimum, ever since. I sat in the kitchen while Eleanor was on the phone in the bedroom, and when she came out 20 minutes later, her face had settled into something I recognized. A decision that had already taken root. She sat across from me, put both hands flat on the table. Suzanne's invited us down for Christmas. Her lanai, her mother's recipe for that orange-glazed ham, just the three of us. I'm in, I said. Just like that. Eleanor, our daughter-in-law sent you a work order. Our son watched her do it and said nothing. Suzanne's offering you a lanai in Florida in December. What exactly is there to decide? She exhaled. Long, slow, like something held for weeks finally let go. Pulled the notepad out of the kitchen drawer, wrote a few lines, folded the paper, set it under the sugar bowl, then opened the laptop, pulled up Air Canada, found the 6:15 out of Pearson on Christmas morning, 2 seats to Fort Myers. She looked up at me. I nodded once, she hit confirm. The text kept coming all week. Monday, rolls have to be from scratch, store-bought always tastes like cardboard lol. Wednesday, hey mom, doing scratch pie crust right? Frozen gets soggy, found a great tutorial if you need it. Friday, one more thing, Daniel and Priya are coming, they're kind of foodies, want everything elevated. Daniel and Priya, first time those names came up. I asked Eleanor who they were. Tyler's regional director, she said, and his wife. I sat with that a minute. This Christmas dinner, the 17-item spreadsheet, the 4 a.m. start, wasn't a family meal, it was a career event. Brienne wanted to impress her husband's boss, and she'd decided Eleanor's hands were the tools she'd use to pull it off. Each text landed with no pleas and total certainty. Eleanor answered everyone with a single word, okay. I asked her once if that was wise. I'm not stringing her along, she had said. I'm just not arguing with someone who isn't listening. 31 years married to this woman. I knew that particular calm. The same one she used on a difficult parent at a recital. Patient, clear-eyed, finished negotiating. The boarding passes sat in the dish on my dresser next to my watch and my wallet. Seats 22C and 22D. 10 days out, and we were already gone in every way that mattered. 8 days before Christmas, Eleanor drove over to return a spare key that no longer worked on Tyler's new smart lock. Came home half an hour later, sat at the table without taking her coat off. I knew that face. What happened? Door was unlocked. She'd stepped in to leave the key on the counter and heard Brienne on the phone upstairs, talking to someone about seating arrangements. Daniel's definitely coming. Him and Priya. A few people from the regional office. I just need to look amazing. Mom's handling all the food. That part's covered. Mom's handling all the food. That part's covered. There's a thing in bridge inspection called a non-load-bearing member that's been dressed up to look structural. You don't find out it's false until you start pulling at it, and the deck doesn't move. That's what this was. Brienne had built a Christmas dinner that looked like family and functioned like a corporate showcase, and the piece she'd quietly decided was load-bearing. The thing she'd counted on without ever asking was my wife. Eleanor took her coat off, finally, hung it on the chair back. She doesn't think we'll actually do it, she said. She thinks I'll show up at 4 a.m., because I always have. Then Christmas is going to be very educational for her, I said. 6 days out, I called Tyler myself. Eleanor had asked me not to. She'd already talked to him directly, and it hadn't moved an inch. But I'm his father, and there are things a man needs to hear from his father, especially when he doesn't want to. He picked up on the second ring. I kept it short. Tyler, your mother's been handed a 17-dish list for 28 people. No help. 4 a.m. start. She told you it was too much. You told her to do it anyway. I need you to fix that. A pause. Dad, I know, but Bree's already got everything. Tyler, another pause. It's just this once. I'd spent enough years on job sites to know a man repeating words that weren't his own. Those were Brienne's, preloaded, waiting. I'm telling you plainly, I said. Your mother is not catering your wife's office party. Fix it. Dad, I really think I love you. Good night. I hung up. Eleanor was at the table when I came back in. Read my face. He's not ready to hear it, she said. He will be, I said. She stood, went to the hall closet, pulled down the suitcase from the top shelf and started packing. I want to tell you about a flannel shirt before I go further. Red and black buffalo check, heavy cotton, from a Mark's Work warehouse run we made on a road trip to Sault Ste. Marie years back. I wore it every Boxing Day morning, making my buttermilk waffles, the one meal in this house that's entirely mine. It hung on the hook inside the pantry door with a coffee stain on the left cuff I never got around to treating. The night before Christmas Eve, while Eleanor packed, I went to the kitchen for no reason I could name. Just something to do with my hands. Took the shirt down, held it. Thought about every Christmas I'd stood at that stove next to her. 30-some years of it. She ran the kitchen. I handed her things, kept her laughing, made sure she was never doing it alone in the room even when she was doing all the work. That was the part Brienne had missed entirely. Not the labor, the company. I hung the shirt back on the hook. It didn't need to come to Florida. It belonged here, but it wasn't going to be worn this Christmas. The night before we flew out, Eleanor sat at the kitchen table with the notepad, in front of her 4 lines, folded once, like something that had already made up its mind days earlier. She smoothed it flat with her palm and let me read it over her shoulder. Tyler, I love you, that hasn't changed and it won't. But I can't cook Christmas dinner for 28 people alone. I said so and no one heard me. We've gone to see Suzanne. Back on the 27th, the kitchen is yours. Mom and Dad. She'd added and Dad in different ink. I hadn't asked her to. She set the note in the center of the table, took down the small juice glass she used every morning, plain, nothing special, and set it on top as a weight. We stood there in the kitchen a moment, the light on, the house quiet around us. We're going to hear about this, I said. Yes. Tyler's going to be upset, yes. I looked at her. 31 years, and she still had a way of looking back at me that said more than most people fit into a paragraph. You ready? I've been ready about 2 weeks, she said. We called a cab together. Neither of us trusted an app at 4 a.m. in December, and stood in the hallway waiting, suitcases by the door. The driver didn't ask where we were headed at that hour, which suited us fine. CBC radio low on the dash, heat cranked, Eleanor's hands folded in her lap with the stillness of someone who has made her decisions and is simply letting it happen now. Pearson at 4:30 in December has a particular quality, not empty, suspended, holding its breath between one day and the next. I bought us 2 coffees from a kiosk that were aggressively bad, and we drank them anyway. Eleanor's phone had 3 unread messages from Brienne, sent the night before. Reminders, role assignments, and emoji. Neither of us opened them. At 5:45, they called our group. Standing in line, I thought, right now 28 people believe there's a Christmas dinner being built for them. In a few hours, someone's going to find a note under a juice glass instead. My phone buzzed as we stepped into the jet bridge. Tyler. Hey Dad, swinging by around 7:30 to get you and Mom. Bree wants you starting by 8. He didn't know yet. I put the phone in my coat pocket. We found 22C and 22D. Eleanor took the window. It was up at 6:09, 11 minutes late, which felt about right. Somewhere over Lake Erie, she reached over and put her hand on mine. Neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. Suzanne was waiting at Fort Myers Arrivals with 2 real coffees and no dramatic reaction whatsoever, which is exactly what you want from a friend of 19 years. She hugged Eleanor first, then looked at me. Walter, you actually came. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought Eleanor might talk you out of it on the drive to the airport. She tried, I said. Eleanor gave me a look. Once, I added. We drove out to her place near the water with the windows down. December air warm, in a way that 31 Ontario winters teach you to distrust. Salt, something flowering I couldn't name. Suzanne's place was small and pale yellow with a screened lanai out back facing a canal. A heron standing on a neighbor's dock doing absolutely nothing with complete authority. Eleanor's phone lit up on the patio table. Tyler. Then Brienne. Then Paige. She turned it face down. Suzanne looked at me. You know it won't stop. It'll stop when it stops, I said. She refilled my coffee. I sat back and thought, somewhere in Mississauga right now there's a kitchen with a note in it and no turkey. And here I am on a screened porch in Florida, watching a heron stand on a dock post going nowhere at all. Some problems solve themselves if you stop being the solution. Tyler told us what happened after, in pieces, over the following days, and I'll tell you what I know. At 10 to 8, Brienne came downstairs in a new linen apron, striped artisan, bought specifically for a prep photo she'd planned to post that morning. Golden kitchen light, flour on the counter, the whole picture. The kitchen was dark and cold. No Eleanor, no Walter, no turkey on the counter, no smell of anything. Just the table, a glass, and under it a folded piece of paper. Brienne picked it up, read it. Tyler came down 2 minutes later and found her standing there, still holding it, not moving. He read it too. Told us later he stood for a full 30 seconds without speaking. Then he called me. I didn't answer. He called Eleanor. No answer. Called my cell again, texted, tried the house line on the off chance we'd left our phones home and were sitting in the dark somewhere. Then he called Paige. Paige showed up at 8:20, still in her coat. Brie, can you cook a turkey? I've never cooked a turkey in my life. Paige's husband Dean offered to look it up on YouTube. Nobody took him up on it. 28 people had confirmed. The centerpiece flowers had been delivered the day before. Daniel and Priya had RSVP'd inside 20 minutes of the invite going out. I was watching a heron. By 9, Brienne had called 4 places. The first stopped taking Christmas orders the week before. The second had a frozen dinner kit needing 48 hours thaw time minimum. The third didn't pick up. The fourth, a place on Lakeshore she'd bookmarked from a magazine. Fully booked for dine-in, no takeout on the holiday. She hung up on that one without saying goodbye. Tyler drove to the Food Basics at 9:30. The turkey section, a full aisle 2 weeks earlier, was down to 2 frozen birds, the smaller one 22 pounds, and needing 4 days in the fridge to thaw safely. He stood in the freezer aisle with an empty cart and no good options. Came home with 3 rotisserie chickens from the deli, 2 boxes of instant mashed potato flakes, a bag of dinner rolls from the bakery section, a frozen apple pie, a butter tart platter from the deli case with a dented corner, and a wedge of brie because he remembered, at the last second, that Brienne had mentioned a cheese board. Paige tried the green bean casserole off a recipe on her phone, got a call from her mother-in-law, forgot to set a timer. The house smelled like burnt onion the rest of the afternoon. At 1:30 the guests started arriving. Daniel and Priya at 1:45, exactly on time. The punctuality of people attending something work-adjacent, who've calculated precisely how long they intend to stay. Daniel wore a blazer. Priya brought a bottle of wine and handed it to Brienne at the door with a smile that gave nothing away. The table looked beautiful, I'll give Brienne that. Real eye for arrangement, the linen, the candles, the centerpiece. Then the food came out. 3 rotisserie chickens on her good china, instant mashed potatoes with a faint gray tint under the candlelight, rolls cold in the middle, the butter tarts on a cake stand, the dented box nowhere in sight, but the impression of it still faintly pressed into the pastry. Priya looked at the spread, set her wine down carefully, said nothing. Brienne smiled around the table. We had a bit of a last-minute change of plans. My in-laws weren't feeling well. Daniel nodded. That's too bad. In the kitchen, Tyler stood at the counter with his back to the room. He had asked his mother to cook for 28 people alone. She had told him plainly it was too much. He had said, "Can you just do this one thing?" Standing there looking at 3 grocery store chickens on his wife's good china, he understood, the way things finally land once they stop bouncing off the surface, what one thing had actually meant. Suzanne's ham was everything her mother's recipe promised, orange and clove, the glaze gone almost burnt sugar at the edges, real mashed potatoes with the skins still on, a salad off her own little container garden. We ate on the lanai, the afternoon light going gold and low over the canal, a great blue heron now standing in for the morning's bird, equally unbothered by anything happening 1,800 kilometers north. I was telling Suzanne about a load-bearing repair I'd signed off on out near Sudbury. Terrible weather for 6 straight weeks, when Eleanor's phone rang on the table between us. Brienne. Eleanor looked at the screen, then at me, then at Suzanne. Suzanne studied her ham. Eleanor picked up. Mom. Brienne's voice, a register higher than usual, tight at the edges. Where are you? Do you have any idea what's happening here? Daniel's at our table and there's nothing ready. You could have at least called. Eleanor set her fork down, looked out at the water. Brienne, she said, the same voice she used on a difficult parent at a recital, clear, unhurried, done negotiating. I told you I couldn't do it alone. I said it 3 weeks ago. I said it again at supper. Walter called Tyler directly. No one heard us. A pause. So you thought about yourselves instead. Silence on the line. That's so selfish. We'll be home the 27th, Eleanor said. I hope the rest of your evening goes well. She hung up. Suzanne topped up her wine without being asked. 20 seconds later, my own phone rang. Tyler, I answered. He didn't speak right away. I could hear him outside, the party muffled behind a closed door, then just wind and a dog barking somewhere down the block. Dad. His voice had changed. The defensiveness was gone, what was left underneath it quieter. A man who'd stopped performing and started feeling something. I knew it was too much. I kept telling myself it'd be fine, that you two would just. And I didn't say anything when I should have. He stopped. I'm sorry, Dad. Tell Mom I'm sorry. I believed him. Tyler had never been dishonest with me in his life. He'd chosen the easier path, kept quiet to dodge conflict, let things slide because confrontation felt expensive. That's a failure of nerve, not of character. And I'd made the same failure myself years earlier, with the dog and the trip to Mexico. He came by it honestly. I know, I said. We'll talk when we're home. Go take care of your guests. Is the food good? He asked. I looked at the plate in front of me. The ham, the real potatoes, the warm evening. My wife across the table finally relaxed for the first time in 3 weeks with the last of the Florida light behind her. It's wonderful, I said. Suzanne made her mother's ham. A pause. Good. I could hear him steady himself. Good, Dad. Go, I said. We'll see you the 27th. Eleanor looked at me across the table once I'd set the phone down. I picked up my fork. More ham, she said. Please, I said. Tyler gave us the rest of it in pieces over the following days. Daniel stayed 2 hours, polite, in exact proportion to how well things were going. Not cold, just measured, giving somewhat less of himself than he might have. He ate a chicken leg without complaint, complimented the centerpiece, which genuinely deserved it. At one point, Priya said quietly to Tyler, Your parents usually do all this, don't they? Everything all right? Tyler said they'd had a prior commitment they couldn't move. True. Brienne, across the room, told someone there'd been a last-minute change of plans. Also true, depending on your definition of last minute. The two stories didn't line up by about 45 degrees. The way improvised explanations never do when two people are solving the same problem from different angles without comparing notes. Paige had given up on the casserole and was sitting at the end of the table next to Dean. At one point, she looked down the table at Brienne and said quiet but clear, Bri, you should have asked them properly. Paige, don't start. Paige didn't start. But she held the look a second longer than she needed to. The expression of a younger sister who's finally run out of benefit of the doubt. Then went back to her plate. Guests left by 5 early for a holiday dinner. Earlier than it would have ended with a real bird in a kitchen that had been running since dawn, and the warmth that builds in a house when someone's been cooking in it all day. After everyone left, Tyler did the dishes himself. First time, he told me later, he'd ever washed up after a big family meal. Eleanor had always done it. I'd helped some, but she'd always done it. At the sink, Brienne came in and told him he should have called us more. He turned off the water. I did call them. They told me it was too much. A pause. You knew? Yeah, Tyler said. I knew. He turned the water back on. Brienne left the kitchen. She didn't post a single photo from that day. Not the centerpiece, not the table before the food came out, though she'd taken plenty earlier. They stayed in her camera roll. Daniel's next email to Tyler the following Monday was a routine note about a Q1 timeline. No mention of Christmas. We flew home on the 27th. Toronto was gray, and the kind of cold that gets into the windows of the cab before the heater catches. Not dramatic. Just a low, flat ceiling of cloud that makes you appreciate having spent 4 days somewhere with herons and screened porches. The cab pulled into our driveway, and Tyler was sitting on our front steps. Not his house, ours. He'd driven 40 minutes in that cold to sit on our steps without calling first, which told me he'd thought about it long enough to know a phone call wasn't going to cut it. He stood when I came up the walk. We looked at each other. He had the tired look of a man who's been honest with himself for the first time about something and it's cost him sleep. Brian didn't come, he said. Okay, I said. We went inside. Eleanor had gotten there a few minutes ahead of me, and the kettle was already going. The three of us sat at the kitchen table, the same table where the note had sat under the juice glass 4 days earlier, the same chairs we'd used for 30 years. I knew it was too much, and I said nothing, Tyler said. I kept telling myself it wasn't worth a fight. I let Bree treat you both like you'd just always be there, and I told myself that was fine. He stopped. It wasn't. No, I said. It wasn't. He looked at me like he'd expected more scaffolding around the truth. I didn't have any to give him. Eleanor put her hand over his on the table. We love you. That's not in question, but we will not be made invisible for someone else's convenience. I hear you, Tyler said. Good, Eleanor said and poured the tea. We sat a while without filling the quiet. The kind of quiet that only comes after something true's been said and actually received. The quiet on the other side of a real conversation, when nobody in the room is performing anymore. Best half hour the three of us had spent together in 2 years. Brienne called Monday, I answered. I want you to know, she said. What you did was really hurtful. Brian, I said. I understand it felt that way. I'd like you to understand that sending someone a 17-item spreadsheet and calling it a family dinner is hurtful too. We can talk about this honestly, or we can leave it here.
Your choice.
Silence. Then she hung up. She called back 2 days later, talked less, listened more, asked how the trip was, said Florida sounded nice, said she'd been thinking. She didn't apologize in those exact words, but she asked questions for the first time in 2 years, instead of just issuing instructions, and I recognized that as close to an opening as we were going to get. Eleanor took the second call, talked for 13 minutes. Longer than they'd ever spoken, she told me after, without Brienne assigning her a single task. No grand resolution. No scene where everyone cried and understood each other perfectly and promised to be different people. That's not how any of this works. What changed was smaller and more useful than that. An assumption got removed. The one that said our time, our labor, our willingness were simply available on demand, indefinitely. Once that was gone, everything had to be negotiated, which meant it had to be talked about, which meant everyone had to start acting like people with actual choices. That was enough. Tyler started calling more, asking questions instead of announcing decisions already made. Small things adding up. Eleanor signed up for a watercolor class at the community center. Thursday mornings. Something she'd wanted to do for 2 years and kept putting off because there was always someone else who needed her first. We booked Suzanne's place again for March break. One Saturday morning, I put on the buffalo check shirt and made buttermilk waffles. Just the two of us. Eleanor poured coffee, sat at the counter, and we didn't talk about Brienne or Tyler or Christmas at all. We just had breakfast. Standing there at the stove with the old coffee stain on the cuff, I thought, this is what it was always supposed to be. The two of us in this kitchen on a Saturday with nowhere to be. This, right here. About a week after we got home, Eleanor was clearing out the hall closet and pulled down a shoebox from the top shelf. My handwriting on the lid. Photos, misc. We brought it to the table and went through it together. Birthday parties from the 90s. Tyler, at 9, holding up a pickerel, like he'd just achieved something permanent. A church barbecue neither of us could date. Near the bottom, Eleanor held up a photo from a Christmas 8 or 9 years back, before we'd redone the kitchen. She was at the stove. I stood behind her, arms loose around her shoulders, my cheek against her hair, both of us laughing at something I don't remember. The timer was probably going. The turkey was probably in the oven. Somebody had said something that landed right. I don't remember being photographed. I remember the feeling, being there, not watching from a comfortable distance, not stepping in only for the moments that required me and retreating for the rest. Just in it, all of it, because that's where I wanted to be. Because she shouldn't be alone in that kitchen. Because she'd never once asked me to be there, which made it matter more, not less. That was the thing Brienne never understood, and the thing Tyler had forgotten somewhere along the way and had to relearn the hard way. You don't send someone you love a work order, you show up. Eleanor put the photo in a small frame and set it on the kitchen shelf next to the juice glass. We stood looking at it a while. We should have gone to Florida years ago, she said. We were exactly where we needed to be, I said, until we weren't. She looked at me. That's very philosophical for a Tuesday. I'm a deep man, Eleanor. She laughed, and I thought, that's what 31 years were for. Not producing Christmas dinners for somebody's career. Producing this, the two of us in our kitchen on an ordinary afternoon, laughing at something small, with nowhere we had to be.